Wow.
Scary, scary
What,
stuff.
what caused it to flip?
They don't know yet.
I think it's
The runways were clear.
I think it's a combination of the wind and
No,
slippery.
so apparently the wind was only at 40 miles an hour, so it wasn't that high. So to flip the plane,
It's all those things you'd expect, and then they keep saying, no, it wasn't that, no, it
Yeah.
wasn't that.
yeah, I mean,
It was crazy, eh?
and then.
But should nobody died.
Yeah,
No, nobody's done.
and not even that
Nine
badly,
people went to
just
hospital.
3 people were taken to hospital.
Oh, I see.
But what's strange is all of the plane crashes that have happened just in the last 2 weeks. Something's going on. Okay, let's get started, Chevra. All right. So we were talking about, yeah. You guys are pushing my buttons. All right. All right.
This year's only begun.
He's got a fight for cash.
So we were talking about the evolution of Mechiras Chametz, and how originally it was done between a private Jew and a private non-Jew, and now later it became done as the rabbi does it, and there are so many there are multiple type methods of kinyan, of transaction, that we use today. And v'kol shekain shehaminig shebenosaf l'chol hakinyanim she'osim imagoy. This is what we were up to, that in addition, there are, to all of the different kinyanim that we do, we also do something called a osim gam kinyan odisa. We do a kinyan odita. Now, what is a kinyan odita? It comes from the word lahodot, or to acknowledge. Shekasav hanoda biYehuda shezehu hakinyan hagadol b'chol hakinyanim. He writes, the Noda Yehuda writes that is the most effective kinyan. And what is it? It's a public declaration that the other party has consummated the transaction and has acquired the goods. So that's why we get together a Beis Din, and we sit them down in front of the transaction that's taking place, and we say, okay, we are hereby declaring that Anthony, the non-Jew, has now acquired all of the chametz. V'chein kasav haktzais hachoshen sheleinin mechiras chametz hamubchar b'kinyanim hu la'aknos lifnei hapesach es hachametz lenachrei al yedei kinyan odisa. Dahavi kinyan gamor bein le'inyan mamun bein le'inyan isra. And the Ksos writes the same thing. That's the most effective kid. Ve'afal pishe ha'imrei bina kasav the kinyan odisa hu hodoas baldin velo kinyan. Even though there's another opinion that says that it's not a method of transaction, but it's just an acknowledgement. V'chein kasav habirkei Yosef, v'gam b'sefer Makor Chaim kasav la'alacha shlomo el odisa le'inyan isra chametz. And similarly, the Makor Chaim says that it's not an effective kinyan. Mikol makom bi'er b'halicha shlomo sham de'im asu es hakinyanim ha'regilim imagoy ve'achar kach asu gam shtar odisa shehu moda shemocher eschem tzulagoy. That the Halicha Shlomo writes that if you did all of the other kinyanim that are normative kinyanim, and then afterwards you do a odisa, you make a public declaration in front of a Beis Din that you acknowledge that you've sold the chametz to the goy, mo'ila hamachira l'kuli alma, then everyone will agree that it works. Asher al kein efshar limkor et kol hamanuyot b'mechirat chametz harigila shal yedei harabanut, and therefore you can sell all of your portions, all of your objects that you have, using the Israeli rabbinate, using your local rabbanut, and sometimes you can even use the state's rabbanut. I'm not sure exactly how it works. Now, the Makor Baruch, which is a couple of Rav Shraga's Talmidim, who actually worked on annotating his work, he writes, "Va'ay od ayin b'shut minchas Yitzchak sheherich bazeh." Ravaz, is it the minchas Yitzchak? No, the minchas Yitzchak. I forget if it's Rabbi Stern or Rabbi Vosner. I think it's Rabbi Stern. He expands on this. V'hel sham gamkein shetzarach limkor es amanuyo sheyesh behem chametz lifnei Pesach. The afal pi shemitzadina de malchusa in lazet tokef. He writes, you should sell all of your chametz possessions before Pesach. Even though Dina de Malchusa does not recognize this transaction, Mikol Makom Shapir Dami le'inyan mechiras chametz al kol panim, Kevin da azlinen basar dine Torah kamosha kosov b'shut divrei chaim. He says the same thing as the divrei chaim that we saw above, that even though it's not enforceable in a court of law, but from a halachic standpoint, it works, and therefore it works to divest yourself of chametz ownership. Va'od va'od, and he gives another argument. Taharei mitzad hamalchus heim lo mitnagdim l'mechira, ela shemechayvim sheyarisham kefi chukeim kamo shekosav b'shut chasim sofer ayin sham. He also brings the argument of the chasim sofer that we saw. Does anyone remember that argument? The government doesn't care if you sell your house to somebody else without registering title, a transfer of title. They just don't acknowledge it in the event that it is challenged. So if you want to, if both parties, if the buyer is amenable to that, knowing that he's completely unprotected legally and he wants to pay X amount of dollars and take possession of the house, the government doesn't care. Okay. I would imagine that this is probably done in certain situations where there would be tax liabilities for one or both parties, where they do an under the table transaction, I don't think the government cares as long as
They get their take.
no, the government doesn't.
No, but they'll want
not-
their taxes too.
The government's not going to get their take, but the only thing is that it's not an enforceable transaction.
Honest.
It's just not something that can be upheld. So if the seller could theoretically, if he's a rat, he could theoretically turn around and say, "Get out of my house! I never sold it to you." Or if after years have transpired and the title is still in the name of the seller and not the buyer, it will not pass to the next generation of heirs. And Rav Sternbach also expands on this topic. Ve'heir al das haminchas Yitzchak di imchuke hamanuyos heim shirak efshar lehe'aver manuyot al yedei rishon l'chadoyme shuv havi harishon midin Torah gamkein kevin shekachus gam b'neihem meirosh. And I'm not sure. He says, im chukei hamanuyot, if the laws of selling portions are that you can transfer ownership by just itemizing the items that you want to transfer, then it is midin Torah, and that's agreed upon by both parties. So apparently he is not so happy with that. Elabir Sham, the Kevin Shekol Hamachir Nesta L'Shem Das, V'Chadesh Lo Yavar B'Bal Yiro, B'Bal Yimotze, Yesh Lomar Shechevras Hamanuyos Lo Makpida B'Kach V'Havi Machira Tova. His argument is that since, let's say, a governing body, he argues that a governing body might not allow such a transaction to take place. He allows for that possibility. But at the same time, his argument is that governing body doesn't care if it's being done for the sake of religious purposes. So his argument is slightly different. His argument is, even if the government would say, no, you're not allowed to effect a transaction of goods using this kind of contract, using this kind of mechanism, but nonetheless, they still won't mind, since they know it's being done for religious purposes and not for other purposes. So anyway, there's different ways of looking at this. But at the end of the day, a person should feel comfortable selling his chametz when he needs to. Again, there's no mitzvah to do mechiras chametz unless you own chametz. It's even better if you don't own any chametz. Now, what about the crumbs and the stuff that adheres to the pots and stuff like that we also include in the mechiras chametz? Well, the fact of the matter is, we are mafkir those things. So a lot of people will do mechiras chametz out of a fear that maybe I have some chametz in my ownership that I'm not aware of, and so that's fair. You can say, okay, I'll sell whatever chametz I was planning to get rid of and I didn't get rid of that I want to do. But it's important to know that when we do mechiras chametz, we only sell pieces of chametz that are a kazayas or larger. That's explicit in the contract. Why? Because the pieces that are smaller than a kazayas, a person is mafkir them when he says kol chamira. We want to leave something for the owner when he does bedikas chametz.
So Rabbi, do you need to list the chametz by now? I mean, most
So-
people would just say it's in the cupboard or it's in the kitchen or whatever they.
Yeah, so
by area,
what the
not-
poskim say is it becomes more real the more you itemize, the more explicit you are, and that's why not only do I in my authorization forms do we have a space where you write it'll be found in such and such address in the following places. You should fill in if it's in the car or if it's in the cupboard in the pantry, whatever. But then you also write the approximate value is, because then you're giving a more realistic type of. In other words, it can't become what's called in the terms of the Gemara a chuchla utlula, to become a joke. It can't become a joke. It's got to be somewhat realistic.
We define it in some way.
Yeah.
We define it by dollar value.
Right.
And location.
By location, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very generalized location.
Okay. All right. Next. Mechiras chametz b'shvil adam shemechusar hakara. Selling the chametz of someone who is not of sound mind. Okay. So
An older parent.
yeah. So the shaila is yesh lanu doda ashir v'hu shochev b'li hakara. We have a rich uncle. We're waiting for him,
The waiters.
right? And he is, he's there in his bed without much cognition. Okay. Hayim anu yecholim limkor et hachabet shelo lifnei Pesach kidei lahatzilo me'isur bal yera'eh ubal yumatzeh. Do we have a right to take it upon ourselves to sell his chametz to avoid him having to be over the isser of having chametz in his possession over Pesach?
You're usually allowed to do something that's in their interest.
That's in someone's interests, yeah.
Wouldn't that be the executor's decision to do this, take care of that automatically? Or we can
It
take
hasn't
the question?
passed yet.
Well, the question is, first of all, are we permitted to do so without his authorization? And number two, is it necessary to do so? In other words, why can't you argue he's putter from mitzvahs? He ain't eating matzah on Pesach, or maybe he could eat matzah. We don't know. But is he chayiv in mitzvahs? Bichlal, is he chayiv in mitzvahs?
That's if no one's staying in his place. His place is empty.
Or
It's just
it's just him and his caregiver, his Filipino caregiver. That's right. That's right.
Unless she's the Seventh-day Adventist, I'm sure it would be clear.
Okay. Well, let's take a look. Now, I just want you to know that when I do mechiras chametz, I sell the chametz of all of my members on their behalf, even if they didn't come and present me with an authorization form. That's included in the contract because we assume that they would want to sell their chametz. Now, you do not have permission to reveal this to the rest of the congregation.
I'll speak to you later.
Might not want to post this one.
You may not reveal
Have
this
been recorded.
because now people just won't take it seriously, right? We want people to take it
How
seriously.
can you do it without their consent?
Because it's in their interest.
Same thing with Uncle Moshe,
Uncle Winshie, your Mechuy is your family, you're responsible
Well,
for it.
but with Uncle
Are
Moshe,
you
you know,
responsible for the family of the shul, for every member of the shul?
Maybe I'm not his executor. Maybe Aunt Shirley, from the other side is his executor, and she doesn't know from
Surely you
chametz.
jest.
She couldn't care less. And I'm the from nephew, and
Rabbi, don't you run into the risk that they'll use it on Pesach and they're stealing?
so that's a good question. Which is better? Is it better to sell someone's chametz, and so that they won't violate the isser of oni chametz? What if, even though you know that they may be over on Geneva. So Rav Moshe has a tshuva on that. And just as a preface, I think I might have told you, there was a guy named Dave Gold. Dave Gold of blessed memory was the owner of the 99-cent only stores all along the West Coast. Yeah. Did you ever sell to them?
No.
That's probably too far. So he was the first dollar store in the United States. And his company was huge, in the billions, with the B, right? And I had the zuchus one year to sell his chametz. So the question becomes, the 99-cent only stores, it's like Dollar Tree or whatever, right? So they definitely were staying open on Pesach. So which was better, to let Dave be the owner of the chametz, and at least he's not a ganef by stealing the Gentiles' chametz, or is it better to sell his chametz and let him sell the goy's chametz? Or with Moshe Paskins, it's better to sell his chametz. It's better to sell his chametz because the Isser of Geneva is not as great as Bal Yira and Bal Yimatzeh, and also it'll be retroactively annulled once we get the chametz back, hopefully. And so there won't be any Geneva retroactively, but the Bal Yira and Bal Yimatzeh will remain. Okay.
So what's meant by once we get the chametz back? Because selling the chametz.
So selling chametz to a Gentile, then we buy the chametz back after Pesach.
Oh, I see.
It does not losing any money or anything by you selling it in between.
Yeah.
Rabbi, it seems because this is so important, such a high level there, in the other streams of Yiddishkeit, like conservative reform, you would think that they would also put a big emphasis on this too, of whatever they choose to do or not do, but you would think that that's also something high in the level, no?
What, selling chametz?
Selling chametz, yeah.
First of all, I don't know. Maybe
Do
the
they?
conservative rabbis do sell the chametz. I have no idea. Do they?
Maybe years ago, but I don't hear about this anymore. People that I know in that sort of movement, this is not on the radar.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I can't really respond to that.
The ones that, you know, the Buddhists and Zetas are still alive.
Look, yeah, Reform Judaism is not a
No,
halachic
no.
movement to begin with, right? So,
Conservative.
but conservative, Judaism, maybe they do sell the chametz, I guess take a look at an old Beth Tzedek bulletin and see if they have an authorization form to sell your chametz. Or
Rabbi Grover.
They used to have Orthodox rabbis here in the conservative.
a Beth Tikva, maybe. What's that, Izzy?
Beth Emet had an Orthodox rabbi. I'm sure they sold it.
Beth Emet had an Orthodox rabbi. Yeah,
Rabbi Kelman.
yeah. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's sold everyone's chametz,
Maybe he had them all in mind.
It could be, maybe he had them in mind, I don't know. I also, by the way, it happens every single year without fail, that after I do Mechiras Chametz, someone comes all disheveled, Oh, where's the Mechiras Chametz for the forms? Yeah. We've only been advertising it for the last 2 months, yeah.
So Rabbi, how do you put a value on something if you don't know? Like if you're covering the community, how do you put a value, or how do you or is it just a blanket comment?
What do you mean? I get the Gentile receives every single
No,
authorization
you're
form.
saying that you include the community
Yeah,
in your
yeah,
document.
in the sale.
So
So no, I don't put a value on that. I tell that's why it's not as good as if you step forward and you sign your own authorization form, right?
so it's like
Do you put an address?
What? Can't hear you, Izzy.
Sorry. Do you put an address?
No, because I would have to go through the whole database and see who hasn't sold their chametz, and then
Yeah, but you don't know who sold to somebody else.
yeah, somebody may have sold to somebody else. Yeah. Okay.
So that's not an issue of selling it twice then? If they sold it, now you're selling it again on their.
It wouldn't be a valid sale. And that's one of the things, one of the stipulations is if any one of the people that I'm selling on their behalf, their sale is not valid, it doesn't invalidate the other parties as being their proxy. Okay, so let's take a look. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people who say, I sold it at my shul, and then this Chabad guy came over and wanted me to sell it to him, so I sold it to him also. Yeah.
Well,
It's just,
fine.
3 times.
yeah, because I wanted to be machmir, Yeah. Hinei b'din mechiras chametz shel acher shelo midato. So selling someone's chametz without their knowledge, that whole issue. Kasav haponim meiros sheim adam mochar es chametz chaver shelo midaito hamochira mo'ila. So the Panim Meiros writes that if you sell someone else's chametz without their knowledge right before Pesach, that is effective. Mishum dezachen la'adam shelo b'fanav, because we consider it to be something that is to his advantage, something that is to his benefit. And we have a principle of we provide benefit to someone in their absence. So that's throughout the Gemara. If, let's say, I know that this person would want me to buy something for them, so then I shell out the money for them. They acquire it as soon as I take it from the store, and then they will owe me the money later. But it's theirs, halachically, it's theirs. V'hu adin b'mi shemachar behema me'uberes shel chaveru legoy k'dei lahafkia es havlad mikedushas bechor. The same thing would be true. Let's say my friend has a pregnant cow. Okay, the cow is pregnant, and it's pregnant with its first calf. And I want to remove the kedusha of the firstborn calf, because certainly in Eretz Yisrael, I'm not sure if it applies in Chutz La'aretz, but the firstborn calf has to be given to the Kohen. Okay, so and I want to be able to circumvent that law. So I go ahead, not only do I do it for myself, but I take my friend's pregnant cow and I sell it to a non-Jew, so that when it gives birth, the calf will have no kedusha. Shechola hamechira mitamanal. So that's a way to circumvent the halacha. I don't know.
We have a lot of cows around.
Or you have
Yeah.
a friend
Yeah.
man down.
In other words, it doesn't belong, the Kohen can't claim it today, just like a Kohen can't claim Truma, because no one can prove that they're a Kohen. So all of these priestly gifts don't really apply today. Okay,
Rabbi,
yeah, Shmuel.
if there's a partnership between a Jew and a goy, so if they're going to sell 1% of the pregnant cow, would that
That's right. You could even sell a percentage of the animal. And I think that removes the kedusha from the calf.
Yeah,
I think that's correct.
if you have a partner, isn't it not?
Yeah,
Nullifies.
yeah, it nullifies. Yeah,
the
yeah,
first.
that's right. So it works even if I do it on behalf of my friend. We learn this from the halachas of chala, because I'm not sure if it's a Mishnah or a Gemara, but Chazal teach that if you see someone's dough and it's going to spoil because it's been laying out there, and you want to bake the bread, but you know that you have to take challah before you bake the dough, you can take challah on behalf of your friend without asking him permission, because we consider it to be a benefit, an advantage to the owner to have that done on his behalf. Umizen nira, Tehu hadin kan she'efshel limkor sachamet shelo keven dezachen la'adam shelo b'fanav. And therefore, since it's considered to be meritorious for him, it would seem that you could go ahead and do it. Okay. So, Amnam yesh ladun lefi masha kasav hatvu ashor shahamachiretz chametz she'osim hayom afal pi she'osim oso b'ha'arama mikol makom hamachira mo'ila kevin shemilvad hamachira osim gam bittul chametz. But it's important to note a statement from the Tevuos Shor. He says that even though mechiras chametz today involves some level of, he calls it ha'arama, it's a form of deceit. It is somewhat deceitful because the goy never really takes possession of the chametz in any real sense. Okay, but nonetheless, it's valid because in addition to the mechira, we also do a bittul chametz. So every owner says, Kol chamira v'chamira, I hereby nullify any chametz that's in my possession. And by doing so, he's completely removing himself from any ownership of the chametz. So even though the mechiras, this is another argument as to why mechiras chametz works, because it's not working as a standalone, it's working in tandem with the owner's declaration that anything I own is hereby hefker. V'nimtza shehachametz rak aser midirabanan, and therefore having it in my possession after I've already declared it to be ownerless is only a rabbinic prohibition. The alzeh mahani mechira b'derech harama kevin shezeh bo lahafkia rak iser chametz midirabanan ad kan devarav. And therefore, this kind of weak sale works because there's already been a divestiture of the chametz, and since it's only to remove any fear of violating a rabbinic prohibition of having someone else's chametz in my possession on Pesach, the rabbis permitted it. Ve'im kein b'nidon didan shebal hachametz lo bitel es chemso kevin shu mechusar hakara. So based on that, we would have a question here. Uncle Moshe, who is not of sound mind, never did a bittul chametz, never is going to nullify his chametz before Pesach. He's not going to say kol chamira v'chamira because he doesn't know the words and he doesn't understand what that even means at this stage. So l'chora yesh lodun shelo toel hamachira shenogim hayom shehi neses b'derech harama. So we would have to question whether that kind of sale would help for a person who's not going to do bittul chametz. In other words, like, or even selling it for Dave Gold. I know that he didn't say kol chamira v'chamira before Pesach. So was I still okay to sell his
Were
chametz?
they franchises or he owned with corporate stores?
Corporate stores.
So how can you go to every single store and do? That would be impossible.
Well, you don't have to be there physically, but he sold all of the chametz holdings that the company owned. Eventually, it went a public company. I think it's traded on the NYSE.
Still today.
I think so. I'm not sure. Amnam rov kechol ha'achronim kvar cholko al atvuah shor hanal vehelu lahalacha de hamachiras chametz shenuhuga hayom hi machira gemura v'lo haram. Most poskim disagree with Tvuah Shor. They don't see the sale that we do with the goy as some kind of deceit, but rather it's a complete and legally binding sale. The hamachira mo'ila mishum the anan sahadi shegomer belibo limkor chemtso kedei shelo yavor al bal yimatze. Because we can clearly attest that every Jew wants to divest himself of chametz ownership through the sale because he doesn't want to be over in bal yira and bal yimatze. Ubevadai, let's see. Shahamachira hazu to'il gamla mishalo bitel eschem. So, and therefore, this kind of sale, according to most achronim, will work even if a person did not nullify chametz ownership. Okay, so this is where we'll hold it for today, and Mirz Hashem, we'll continue this discussion tomorrow.
You said the footnote for all the students who put that together.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. He in the next sefer we're going to see.
I was going to ask you now.
He acknowledges in the introduction that these are two of his
What's the
students.
topic of the next?
It's more Choshen
more
Mishpat.
of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So individual shilas and shubas right through on different topics.
Yeah, this next sefer are actual court cases that he presided over.
Really?
And
Is he still alive?
yes, I believe so.
I just Googled Minchas Yitzchak. This is it's Rabbi Weiss, right?
Rabbi Weiss, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
So Rabbi, when did this start, this sale of chametz? I mean, I would think in sort of 18th century that the access to huge amounts of food and stores was not that great, so is it something that's come in lately?
It's evolved.
Always around.
It's evolved. That's what we learned in the, I'm not sure if you were here for that, but yeah. What we've learned that it's evolved over the centuries.
Yeah.
But it's been around for centuries, but it was done differently. Originally, it was done between a private Jew and a private goy.
Right. I heard you say that at the beginning.
Yeah, nowadays we do that wholesale.
Right.
We do it en masse through the rabbi.
Through the rabbi, yeah.
If it would have happened, the hotel would have.
So initially it was something that was done
Between two private parties.
Party.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, have a great day.
All right, you
everybody.
too.